Well, the playoffs had to run straight through Ford Field, and oh boy, did Ford Field run over the Vikings. Wow. Man, a decimation tonight, 31-9. Not one touchdown scored by what we thought was a very high-powered offense with Sam Darnold leading the way.
Ryan, it was never close. Never close.
Didn't appear that way. I'll tell you what, and what I've noticed throughout the game is the red zone offense for the Vikings is absolutely trash. They didn't run the ball at all. They didn't call smart play calls. Sam Darnold misses wide open guys. It's just a cluster. It was terrible. I know it was on the road at Detroit, which is a hard field to play. That's no excuse, though.
This is for the number 1 seed. This is for your season. This is the playoff life. The difference in having the week off and home field advantage for the playoffs versus having to start on the road in LA. Like, if the Vikings want to make it to the Super Bowl now, they have to win 3 straight road games, whereas Detroit gets to rest up. And, I mean, they're just in the driver's seat. I wouldn't have been shocked if you told me Detroit won this game, Ryan. If you'd have told me they dominated and won 31-9 and the game was over at halftime, I didn't see this one coming. I actually thought the Vikings were going to win this game.
Yeah, so let's elaborate a little bit more on Detroit, because I want to talk about the winner first. They deserve it. So obviously they locked up the 1 seed. That they needed that tonight. They needed that win. Do you feel better about this performance? Like, do you feel better about the Lions overall after this performance tonight?
Absolutely. I have more belief in them. I feel better about them after this performance. My lack of belief in Detroit wasn't anything to do with Detroit. It was just the injuries. It was the defensive injuries that just kept piling up. Even tonight they had some. Terry Arnold went out, one of their corner from Alabama, who is kind of a big deal, and somehow they were still able to perform. I'll say this, Alex Anzalone returning, I don't think we can overstate how huge that was for Detroit, because it is unbelievable how bringing him back, we knew he was a great player for Detroit, but I didn't think his addition would make this big a difference to that Detroit defense. Ryan, the defense was fantastic tonight. Absolutely fantastic. Part of that you give to the players. A lot of that, in my opinion, I think you give to Aaron Glenn and the defensive staff coming up with a way to attack Minnesota. We will get into Minnesota, so I won't touch on Darnold specifically here, but Detroit's just relentless pressure on Darnold, constantly blitzing and collapsing the pocket. Collinsworth did a little demonstration at one point in the game that talked about it, to where they weren't really getting off of the edges and pushing for the sack. They were just trying to condense the pocket on Darnold and make him start to feel the rush, and he obviously did. It affected the game. He was bad. My one issue with Detroit, the reason I didn't believe in them, was because I didn't think they could survive the defensive injuries. Look at their last couple weeks. They were having to outscore people. They were having to get in shootouts. Well, one, they didn't have to do that today, even though they could have, because Jahmyr Gibbs had 4 touchdowns. Thank you for that. Lost a parlay on it. With that said, the defense showed up and held a Minnesota offense that you said we all thought was really coming on at the right time, held them to 9 points. It just wasn't close. This was a dominant statement performance from Detroit. And now the road to the Super Bowl goes through Ford Field.
Yeah, I mean, let's just look at the past 3 games. You know, the Bills scored 48 points on them. The Bears scored 17, and the 49ers, they scored 34.
The 49ers put up 34. Yeah. That's crazy.
And then you look at the Vikings tonight, man, and you think, well, this was the big match that everybody has been talking about for the past 3 weeks.
Yes.
This is the one everybody had eyes on, and Detroit comes out and says, no, we got it.
Yeah.
Y'all don't worry about us. And look, I'll give a lot of credit to Hutchinson, too, on the sidelines. He was talking those guys up. He was coaching them through.
Yes.
He was being everything he could be while not on the field.
They came in with a game plan, and they executed it to perfection. You could tell from really the first quarter of that game, and even to your point about the way Hutchinson was handling the sideline, wasn't there just a calm to them? Like, yes. You could see the pressure on Minnesota's. Right. You could feel the pressure on Minnesota. You could feel that it was a big game. And despite where you should have felt the pressure for Detroit, despite the injuries and all the issues and all the factors they've had to overcome, Detroit just looked absolutely ready for the moment. Chris Collinsworth talked about where he spoke to Jared Goff like before the game, and Goff said, hey man, I know how to play these guys. Like, I'm not worried at all. They went in there 100% sure that they were going to dominate that game, and they did. And it's a credit to Dan Campbell and that staff and what he's built at Detroit. Ryan, the Detroit Lions are 15-2, and they're the 1 seed. The laughing stock of the NFL our entire lives, and they're 15-2.
Same record as the Chiefs, by the way.
Unbelievable.
Same record. One thing I will say about Hutchinson, keep an eye on him. They're keeping it a little hush-hush about when he's going to come back. We think he's going to be there if they make it to the Super Bowl, no doubt. But one of the reporters said
there's a little doubt.
I think he's going to be there. And just one of the reporters tonight on the sideline, she was like, yeah, I talked to him. He couldn't elaborate on when his return would be. Obviously, he's not going to show his cards, right, if he could come back earlier. But he looked pretty healthy walking around the sideline tonight. That's all I'm saying. Just keep an eye on him. Whether or not he's on the field or not, he impacts his team. It's clear. It's obvious.
Well, with the addition to, even without him, the addition of Zadarius Smith has really helped them because he made a lot of crucial plays in this game. Without Hutchinson, and if they hadn't added Zadarius Smith, they're really hurting for edge pressure. They're hurting for that guy that can go get after the quarterback. Smith has been that guy. So now you can only imagine if Detroit was able to put themselves in a position to make the Super Bowl, maybe get Hutchinson back, you get him and Zadarius Smith, all of a sudden this defense you were really worried about is coming after you.
Well, throughout the night tonight, the blitz, they were just obliterating the Vikings offensive line.
It was brutal.
There was no counter blitz at all. The Vikings were throwing out plays that just didn't make sense. Even Collinsworth was like, they need to throw some quick slants, like get the ball out fast, get some confidence back in Darnold. They just couldn't do it. And aside from the one wide open, I think it was Jordan Addison on the right side, top of the screen.
Yeah, top of the screen to the right of Darnold. They ran a rub route, and it worked. They got the pick, rub route, whatever you want to call it, and Addison was wide open.
And Darnold looked.
Me and my wife were watching, and my wife was like, I don't think he looked that way. I was like, I don't know, I think he did. And we rewound it and watched, and literally, he's looking. The play's designed to go there, and he comes off the read. And it's so funny. My wife never watches football with me, almost never. We were watching that game literally before the first quarter was up. She said, man, she didn't know his name, but she was like, the Vikings quarterback holds on to the ball a long time. I was like, he sure does.
Well, especially when he's under that type of pressure. But aside from that one blown coverage, pick route, rep route, whatever you want to call it, it's designed to get somebody open quick, especially in red zone offense.
And he didn't take it.
The defense overall for the Lions it was terrific tonight, but that red zone defense was lights out. They were sticking to the receivers, flushing Darnold out. And there was, I think, 2 or 3 times they went for it on 4th and goal, didn't get it. No. They could have put up another, 9 points probably on the scoreboard with field goals if they would have just took the points.
And then when they did kick the field goal and not go for it, they missed it. That summed up their entire night, no matter what they did. And like you said,
then before half, that kick out of bounds. I think it was with the big penalty that allowed them to get down there and score 3 more points. By the way, Jake Bates, this dude will be talked about. There'll be a book written about him or a documentary done. This dude's awesome. Like, I just love his story, being a brick salesman in Houston, getting a phone call, coming out and just showing out.
Just delivering.
One of the best kickers in the league right now, if not the best. So kudos to the Lions and this whole organization. What Dan Campbell's doing there is, you may want to call it reckless at some point, and we thought it was earlier, at the game tonight. When they lined up 4th down, 4th and goal, and we was like, you texted me, you were like, this is stupid, this is dumb. And then they sent the motion, they did that turbo, and every time after the turbo, the next action word is the snap. They caught the Vikings, and they got the first down that led to a touchdown for Jahmyr Gibbs, who had a stellar night, by the way. My gosh. I
texted you and said this is dumb because I thought they were going for it, as did the Vikings.
Because that's Dan Campbell's MO, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's what he does. He goes for it on these wild 4th downs that you got the points right there.
Well,
at
that
point,
to
the
go
game
up 3 scores. It's like if you go for it and don't get it, it's only a 2-score game. Just take the 3, and now it worked out because they didn't have any intention of going for it. They did what they needed to do. But it's so funny because the team that we were, at least me, and not just me, a lot of people were talking about it, worried about the Detroit Lions, worried about them because of their defense. And then tonight, with the right scheme, with the pressures, with the guys standing up, the way the corners were able to hold up, they held up against Jefferson. Yeah, Darnold sold some throws, but the coverage was sticky. And to have that kind of coverage with all those blitzes, it was impressive, Ryan. I think right now, I went from thinking that Detroit's going to have a long road in the playoffs if they want to make it, to now thinking who's going to stop them? Maybe Philadelphia, but if we're going towards the Philly-Detroit matchup, it's going to have to be in Ford Field. They're going to have to beat them at home.